50 things only those who grew up in the 1970s remember. Some memories don't fade, they grow sweeter with time. In this video, we'll look back at 50 things only those who grew up in the 1970s remember. The simple joys, the quiet moments, and the little pieces of life that still echo warmly in the corners of our hearts. Big wheels. Sun-drenched sidewalks and cracked driveways turned into racetracks the moment a kid climbed onto a big wheel. Those colorful, low-riding tricycles, with their oversized front wheels and plastic frames that gleamed under the afternoon sun, were passports to a kind of freedom only childhood could understand. Sitting inches above the ground, feet furiously pedaling, children became fearless racers, weaving between chalk drawings and front-yard trees. The screech of a sudden spin-out, thanks to a well-timed tug of the handbrake, often ended in bursts of laughter that drifted lazily into the summer air. Scuffed wheels and scratched handlebars told the stories of countless imaginary races and daring escapes. Neighbors cheered from porches, parents smiled from garden chairs, and friendships were often sealed over shared victories and tumble-filled wipeouts. Even now, the memory of a big wheel, its colors a little faded in our minds, carries with it the rush of wind against sunburned cheeks and the boundless sense that the world stretched wide open, just waiting for us to pedal toward it as fast as we dared. If you could describe your 1970s childhood in just one word, what would it be? Stretch Armstrong. Sunlit living rooms and backyard patios often transformed into playgrounds for bold imaginations whenever Stretch Armstrong entered the scene. This flexible champion, with his barrel chest and steadfast grin, could be yanked, twisted, and pulled to impossible lengths, defying what any other toy could endure. Kids huddled in excited circles, each eager for their turn to stretch him to the limit, their laughter rising with every daring attempt. Sometimes, enthusiasm proved too much, and a small rip would open, releasing the strange goo within. A proud reminder of a boundary pushed a little too far. Stretch stood as more than just a rubber figure. He became a measure of teamwork, resilience, and the whispered dares that only childhood knows. Even now, thinking back to those lively contests, you can almost hear the echoes of giggles and feel the sunlight flickering across worn linoleum floors. Stretch. Armstrong didn't merely withstand endless tugging, he sparked a feeling that anything with enough heart and determination could be bent beyond what seemed possible. Lite-Brite. Evenings felt a little more alive whenever a Lite-Brite found its way into a cozy corner of the house. Kids would lean in close to the tiny screen, carefully pressing vibrant pegs through sheets of black paper, watching as colorful pictures slowly emerged. Every click of a peg snapping into place brought a flicker of excitement, building pictures in bold reds, vivid blues, and lively greens. Whether copying patterns or inventing their own, children turned quiet moments into glowing displays of imagination. Hours slipped by unnoticed as small hands pieced together stars, flowers, and even clumsy versions of their own names. A misplaced step onto a forgotten peg might draw a sharp yelp, but it never outweighed the thrill of the finished creation. Lite-Brite wasn't merely another pastime. It opened a space where ideas took visible shape, each design shining proudly under the gentle hum of a living room lamp. Looking back now, those tiny constellations of light still echo the wonder of a time when dreams could fit into the palm of a child's hand. Atari Pong. I still remember the first time that tiny white dot danced across a dark screen, as if the future itself had come knocking at our door. Pong wasn't complicated, just two paddles, a bouncing pixel. But to us, it was pure wonder. In the early 1970s, evenings often meant huddling around the TV, twisting the little knobs with nervous excitement, our laughter rippling through the room as we battled for bragging rights. Outside, the world raced ahead, Yet within those four walls, life seemed to sway gently with each flick of that blinking ball. Arcades thrummed with the same quiet electricity, rows of kids waiting anxiously for their shot at tiny triumphs. Pong didn't simply launch video games, it opened a door to connection, giving us a brand new way to play together. Technology no longer felt distant or cold, it felt close, almost tender. Looking back, it wasn't the pixelated graphics or the simplicity of the game that lingered. It was that breathtaking sense of crossing into something unknown, stepping lightly across a threshold into a future we could barely imagine, but instinctively knew was ours. Clackers. Afternoons rang out with the sharp, relentless snap of clackers colliding, creating a soundtrack that colored so many childhood hours of the 70s. Made from two acrylic spheres tethered by a sturdy string, these toys transformed eager hands into whirling engines of determination. Each swing demanded sharper focus, quicker reflexes, and the willingness to accept a few painful knocks along the way. As the rhythm sped up, so did the excitement, with sidewalks and living rooms becoming improvised arenas for friendly competition. Earning a bruise almost felt like earning a badge, proof that you had dared to push for that faster, louder clash. Though rumors of injuries followed them, and some places eventually banned them, clackers remained a badge of youthful bravery and stubborn perseverance. They tested patience, sharpened timing, and delivered small but unforgettable victories. Even now, the faint memory of those clattering sounds can pull you right back to a moment when the world spun a little faster in your hands. And everything felt possible if you just swung hard enough. Vinyl records. It's easy to forget now, but there was a time when music lived inside spinning black discs, waiting for someone to set it free. In the 1970s, afternoons often drifted away in narrow aisles packed with vibrant album art, each cover a doorway to new sounds and untold stories. Choosing the perfect record felt like stumbling upon a secret piece of yourself you hadn't yet met. At home, lowering the needle onto the grooves became a kind of small ceremony. That faint crackle before the first chord wasn't mere noise, it was a signal that something special was about to begin. Whether it roared with the energy of Led Zeppelin, sighed with the wistfulness of Fleetwood Mac, or danced with the brightness of ABBA, each song wrapped itself around the rhythms of everyday life. Records aged alongside their owners, wearing skips and scratches like old scars that only deepened their meaning. In those days, music wasn't invisible. It had weight, texture, and presence, anchoring emotions in a way that still echoes whenever an old track starts to spin. Metal lunchboxes. What could feel more powerful than walking into school with your favorite metal lunchbox swinging at your side? In the 70s, these sturdy boxes weren't just about carrying lunch. They were a badge of honor, a portable billboard for your passions. Whether it was emblazoned with Star Wars battles, the fearless $6 Million Man, or a rock band's electric energy, each design was a declaration of identity. The clink of the matching thermos inside felt almost like armor, promising hot soup or cold milk depending on the season. Scratches and dents only added to their charm, marking every race across the playground and every lunch traded on a whim. Those lunchboxes weren't pristine. They lived the life of the kid who carried them. Even today, glimpsing one tucked away in an attic or a collector's shelf can stir something deep. The quiet pride of a child who felt seen, bold, and a little bit invincible, simply because their heroes rode shotgun with their peanut butter sandwiches. Charlie's Angels. Saturday evenings shimmered with a special excitement when Charlie's Angels took over television screens. At a time when the world was still redefining strength, these three women showed that courage could be as dazzling as it was determined. Farrah Fawcett's feathered hair became a style icon, yet it was the fire in those fearless smiles, the unwavering pursuit of justice, that truly left a mark. Children, armed with plastic badges, would race across yards beneath the fading sun, weaving make-believe missions filled with twists and close calls. Beyond their fashionable flair, the angels delivered a lasting lesson. Real bravery wears countless faces and often reflects back from the person staring into the mirror. Each story sewn into the vibrant memories of youth blended humor, suspense, and the thrill of possibility. Thinking back, Charlie's Angels offered more than weekly adventures. They gifted a whole generation the belief that strength could be fierce yet elegant, resilient yet full of heart, shining brightly through every challenge they faced. The Easy Bake Oven. How could something as small as a light bulb create so much wonder in a child's heart? In the 1970s, the Easy Bake Oven offered kids a first taste of independence, pulling them into the hidden world of kitchens and quiet ambitions. Tiny hands whisked powdered batter with the seriousness of a master chef, pouring it into petite pans as if preparing a grand feast. Sliding those trays into the gentle warmth of the little oven felt like unlocking a secret, with minutes stretching endlessly as sweet aromas began to drift through the room. Sometimes the cakes emerged uneven, a bit too brown around the edges, yet that hardly mattered. What stayed with you was the pride, the sense that you had made something real, all on your own. Even today, memories of those first little triumphs come rushing back, reminding us that some of the most treasured victories are born from the smallest beginnings, where excitement, patience, and the scent of sugar came together in the quiet corners of childhood afternoons. Pet rocks. Hidden among the colorful chaos of 1970s, novelty shops sat one of the most peculiar treasures a child could claim: a pet rock. Nestled carefully inside a small cardboard box, complete with breathing holes and a playful instruction booklet, it offered all the fun of a companion without a shred of responsibility. No feeding, no walking, no cleanup. Only the strange, gleeful pride of owning something delightfully indifferent. What began as a gag between friends quickly caught fire. By the end of 1975, it had blossomed into a national craze. Kids gave their rocks names, made tiny homes from shoeboxes, and tucked them beneath scraps of cloth with genuine affection. Thinking back, it almost defies belief that a smooth, ordinary stone could sweep through an entire generation. Yet perhaps that's the heart of its charm, proof that even in a complicated world, a little silliness, wrapped in pure imagination, could spark something far bigger than anyone expected, and leave a smile lingering long after the fad had faded. Polaroid cameras. The gentle whir of a Polaroid camera and the faint snap of its shutter did more than take a picture. It placed a piece of life right into your hand. During the 1970s, the wonder of instant photography felt like a small miracle. A single press would send a square sheet sliding out, its glossy face slowly unveiling sunlit smiles, ocean waves, or lively holiday tables, almost as if the memory itself was materializing before your eyes. Families leaned in, waving each developing photo through the air with hopeful grins, eager to see every detail emerge. With their chunky designs and comforting weight, Polaroid cameras became must-haves for birthday parties, cross-country drives, and slow Sunday afternoons. Whether perfectly framed or charmingly off-center, each print held something raw and real. Today, finding a faded Polaroid inside an old album can instantly transport you back to a time when preserving a moment meant waiting, watching, and feeling it unfold right in your hands. Bell-bottom jeans. Across sidewalks, dance floors, and sunlit parks, bell-bottom jeans became the unmistakable symbol of 1970s spirit. They weren't merely pants, they were declarations of freedom woven into every sweeping flare and each confident stride. Starting snug at the knee before exploding into wide, flowing hems, Bell-bottoms expressed emotions that words alone struggled to capture. They moved in rhythm with platform shoes, clashed playfully against tie-dye shirts, and brushed the tops of suede boots with a quiet defiance. Slipping into a pair felt like stepping into something greater, like standing proudly in a generation that celebrated individuality without apology. From buzzing high school corridors to smoky concert halls, they threaded themselves through every corner of daily life, reflecting the music, the hopes, and the restless dreams of youth. As the decade gave way to softer tones, those dramatic hymns had already left their mark. Even now, the sight of those bold silhouettes brings back the strum of guitars, the glitter of spinning disco balls, and a fierce, untamed longing that still whispers through time. Platform shoes. City sidewalks in the 1970s seemed to rise and fall with every bold step, thanks to the towering platform shoes that ruled both fashion and imagination. Every clomp across a tiled floor or uneven sidewalk felt like part of a bigger dance, a generation lifting itself just a little higher above the ordinary. These shoes didn't just add inches. They added a sense of daring, a glint of possibility with each stride. Whether covered in glitter or splashed in neon hues, platforms caught the light and the eye, turning simple walks into quiet parades. They belonged with bell-bottoms and flowing jumpsuits, but more than that, they belonged to the spirit of youth refusing to be small. Learning to balance on those chunky soles was almost a rite of passage, a wobbling test of both style and stubbornness. Even now, an old photo of gleaming platforms stirs up memories of disco beats echoing into the night, of laughter carried on summer breezes, and of the unshakable feeling that, just maybe, life was meant to be lived a few inches closer to the stars. Feathered hair. Who could stand in front of a mirror in the 1970s and not dream of capturing that perfect windswept wave of feathered hair? Inspired by Farrah Fawcett's dazzling presence, it became more than a trend. It was a quiet expression of optimism, a way to bring a little California sunshine into daily life. Girls spent long afternoons with blow dryers humming, round brushes twirling, and the faint mist of hairspray settling over the room like morning haze. Each section flipped outward with careful precision, forming a floating crown that seemed to dance under the light. Soon, boys joined in too, growing their hair a little longer and letting those soft-edged layers frame their faces with an effortless cool. Across playgrounds, bustling sidewalks, and crowded school dances, feathered hair flowed with the spirit of freedom and possibility. Even today, a glance at an old yearbook photo, with those iconic waves, can instantly revive the scent of hairspray and that fleeting feeling that, for one beautiful moment, the world moved just a little slower and dreams hovered close enough to reach. Saturday morning cartoons. There was a special kind of stillness to Saturday mornings in the 1970s, the kind that wrapped around you like a warm blanket before the world fully woke up. Without alarms or reminders, kids would drift from their beds, drawn by the quiet promise of animated adventures waiting just beyond the kitchen. Bowls of sugary cereal in hand, they'd stake out a favorite spot in front of the television, eyes wide and hearts ready. Shows like Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?, The Jetsons, and Super Friends filled the living room with color and laughter, spinning stories that felt as real as anything outside the window. Those few morning hours belonged entirely to the young, untouched by chores, school, or grown-up concerns. Even parents knew better than to intrude on that sacred time. Looking back, it wasn't just about cartoons. It was about wonder, about feeling safe, about knowing that, for a little while, the whole world was just bright enough, just kind enough, to let dreams run wild. Which memory from the 1970s still makes you smile today? Please share it in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. Disco balls. In every corner of a 70s party, The gentle whirl of a disco ball sent sparkling rivers of light spinning across the walls, weaving a spell that belonged to the night alone. It didn't matter if you were packed into a lively nightclub or gathered in a shadowy basement with a stereo pounding. The moment that mirrored globe began to turn, everyday worries faded into the background. Shoes shuffled across sticky floors, bursts of laughter rippled through the heavy beats, and for a few brief hours, life felt lighter, freer, touched by a wild kind of wonder. Against the steady pulse of the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack or the latest hit, those rotating beams transformed even hesitant steps into spirited twirls. The disco ball stood as more than just decoration. It became a beacon for all those chasing a feeling too brilliant to keep. Even now, a single glint of scattered light across a dim room can bring back the pulse of those carefree nights, electric, vivid, and forever dancing somewhere just beyond reach. Black and white TVs. Have you ever closed your eyes and heard the faint hum of a black and white television warming up? In countless living rooms across the 1970s, those sturdy sets held their ground against wood-paneled walls, their silvered screens humming quietly in the background. Even as flashes of color became the next big thing, many families stayed loyal to the comforting flicker of grayscale images. I can still see it clearly. Evenings spent fine-tuning the rabbit ears, giving the cabinet a hopeful tap, and easing into another cozy episode of The Andy Griffith Show. Without vibrant hues vying for attention, the world on screen felt more familiar, as if the characters could step right through the glass. Each pause before the picture sharpened seemed to draw everyone a little closer, a silent anticipation filling the room. Though today's ultra-thin TVs look nothing like those solid relics, back then, they stood as quiet witnesses to everyday life, turning ordinary nights into something a little more lasting, where small moments lingered just a little longer. The Brady Bunch. Who could ever forget the cheerful chaos of the Brady Bunch spilling across their television screen? More than a program, it opened a window into a world where laughter patched every squabble and hugs mended every stumble. In a decade when households were being reshaped in ways few had expected, the Bradys made change feel comforting and familiar. 6 lively kids, 2 patient parents, and a housekeeper who seemed to hold it all together. Each episode unfolded like a visit to a neighbor's bustling home. The upbeat tune of the opening credits, with smiling faces in tidy boxes, felt like a promise of warmth waiting just beyond the screen. From Marcia's unforgettable, "Oh my nose" moment to Peter's unpredictable voice cracks, the show wove itself into the background of growing up. Watching the Brady Bunch felt like pulling up a chair in a place where no one was ever left out. In their world, even the messiest days ended with a sense that somehow, family had a way of making everything a little better. Mood rings. How could a simple piece of jewelry stir so much wonder in a young heart? Mood rings, with their swirling colors and whispered promises, sparked the imaginations of 1970s kids like few things could. Sliding one onto your finger felt almost like uncovering a hidden language, as the stone shifted from deep blue to smoky gray or soft amber, each hue suggesting emotions too big for words. Even if the science behind them leaned more toward playful than precise, nobody seemed to mind. Children compared shades on playgrounds, giggled over sudden color changes, and believed just for a moment that their moods had found a way to speak out loud. Every ring turned into a little secret keeper, worn between rounds of dodgeball or long evenings chasing fireflies. Whether flaunted as a sign of coolness or treasured for its flickering mystery, the mood ring offered something rare, a colorful reminder that feelings are living, changing things, and that even in childhood, they were worth noticing, understanding, and celebrating. Tube tops. Sun-soaked afternoons in the 1970s often brought a parade of color and freedom, and nothing captured that spirit quite like the tube top. With no straps and endless stretch, these vibrant little tops made summer feel even lighter, clinging just enough to let the breeze dance across your skin. Bold patterns, bright solids, and playful textures turned sidewalks, parks, and beach boardwalks into moving canvases of youthful expression. Worn proudly with high-waisted denim shorts or the wide, sweeping hems of bell-bottoms, tube tops spoke of confidence and the easy rhythm of warm weather days. It took a certain fearlessness to wear one, but those who did seemed to move with an effortless, infectious energy. They were more than just a fashion choice. They reflected a cultural shift toward individuality, freedom, and a little bit of rebellion. Even today, glimpsing an old photo brings back the sparkle of those endless summers, when style wasn't about perfection, but about feeling alive under the wide-open sky. Scooby-Doo, where are you? Mornings in the 1970s often carried the unmistakable charm of a mystery waiting to unfold, and for countless kids, it began with the familiar sights and sounds of Scooby-Doo, where are you? Settling into a cozy spot on the carpet, cereal in hand, we'd lose ourselves in a world of foggy woods, creaky old mansions, and shadows that danced just out of sight. The mystery machine would rumble onto the screen, and suddenly, the day felt wide open, filled with hidden clues and brave adventures. Scooby's nervous laughter, Shaggy's clumsy antics, and the scramble for Scooby snacks became comforting rhythms we could count on. Every unmasking brought a little rush of triumph, a feeling that even the scariest mysteries had answers if you stuck together. In that hour, the world outside seemed to disappear, leaving only the safe hum of television light and the certainty that friendship and a little bravery could make anything right again. Even now, those dusty hallways and secret passageways feel just a thought away, waiting to be explored once more. Happy Days. Evenings always seemed a little lighter when Happy Days appeared on the screen, infusing homes with the easy charm of the 1950s. Families would settle side by side, letting the day's concerns drift into the background as Richie Cunningham, his big-hearted family, and the ever-cool Fonzie filled their living rooms with familiar smiles. The show spun tales of uncomplicated troubles, unwavering friendships, and laughter that somehow always found its way back. Every episode felt like stepping through a doorway into something gentler, with jukebox tunes and lazy golden afternoons weaving the backdrop. Phrases like "ayy" and "sit on it" slipped effortlessly into everyday conversation, while leather jackets and pompadour haircuts leapt from the screen into real life. Spin-offs like Laverne and Shirley carried that energy even further, extending the spirit that made the original shine. Thinking back now, Happy Days wasn't merely a throwback to a different era. It became part of the rhythm of the 1970s itself, offering a world where kindness, loyalty, and a dash of mischief made everything feel just a little more possible. The Muppet Show. Can you still hear the soft strum of Kermit's banjo or the gentle rustle of the curtains just before the show began? The Muppet Show wasn't just another program. It opened a window into a place where laughter, music, and a touch of mischief lived in perfect balance. Jim Henson's beloved characters delivered more than entertainment. They brought a kind of sincerity rarely found elsewhere. Kermit's quiet resilience, Miss Piggy's dazzling ambition, Fozzie Bear's endless puns, and the grumbling from Statler and Waldorf all became part of our earliest memories. Even absurd little tunes like Mana Mana managed to stick with us, echoing in the back of our minds long after bedtime. Watching The Muppet Show felt like reconnecting with companions who never judged a little mess or a missed note. It reminded us that humor carried wisdom, imperfections held their own beauty, and facing the world was often better done with a wink, a playful jab, and a melody that refused to fade from our hearts. Schoolhouse Rock. Some of the most lasting lessons from childhood came not from chalkboards or heavy textbooks, but from a flickering screen on quiet Saturday mornings. Nestled between waves of cartoons, Schoolhouse Rock found its way into our lives like an old favorite song, teaching in a way that never felt like work. Tunes like Conjunction Junction and 3 is a Magic Number turned knowledge into catchy rhythms, planting ideas that quietly grew alongside us. Those bright, lively animations uncovered hidden patterns in the world, revealing how every word and number held a story waiting to be understood. Even after the television had been switched off, the melodies lingered, weaving themselves into playground chatter, classroom recitations, and family conversations. Thinking back now, the true gift of Schoolhouse Rock wasn't limited to facts and figures. It was the feeling that learning could be lighthearted, musical, and full of wonder. In those small windows between cartoons, it left behind a quiet message that understanding the world could be as natural and as unforgettable as a tune still humming decades later. If you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you'll catch our next nostalgic journey. 20 funny things about the 1970s we all experienced. The 1970s were wild, weird, and absolutely unforgettable. From lava lamps to disco fever, bell-bottoms to backyard cookouts, life had its own funky rhythm. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Some of it was downright hilarious. In this video, we're rewinding to the quirkiest, funniest things we all experienced growing up in the 70s. Let's take a groovy stroll down memory lane. The polyester suit. In the 1970s, we had plenty of fabric options, but for some reason, everyone was drawn to polyester like moths to a disco ball. It was everywhere. And if you were trying to look sharp, whether for the office, a cousin's wedding, or a Saturday night at the disco, you probably slipped into a polyester suit without thinking twice. These suits were meant to be practical, wrinkle-resistant, easy to wash, and made to last. But let's be honest, while they might have felt sleek and modern at the time, today, they look more like walking plastic. And no polyester outfit was complete without a giant flapping butterfly collar that looked like it could take flight at any moment. The bigger the collar, the cooler you were. Or at least that's what we told ourselves. Looking back, the whole ensemble screams 1970s. Shiny fabrics, loud patterns, and enough static electricity to power a lamp. But that was the charm of it all. It wasn't just about fashion. It was about fun, flair, and dancing your way through life in a suit that could survive anything, except maybe a fashion critic. Lava lamps of the 1970s. In the 1970s, if you wanted your room to feel just a little more groovy, or maybe a little more like a mad scientist's lair, you needed one thing: a lava lamp. These hypnotic lamps weren't just lighting fixtures. They were conversation starters, mood setters, and the ultimate symbol of far-out decor. With their slow-moving, colorful blobs of wax floating up and down inside glowing liquid, lava lamps had a mesmerizing effect. You didn't just look at a lava lamp, you watched it. For hours. No music, no TV. Just you and those dreamy, ever-changing shapes. It was like a psychedelic trip without leaving your beanbag chair. Whether you were hosting a party or just lying on your shag carpet lost in thought, the lava lamp set the tone. Chill, mysterious, and a little bit magical. It fit perfectly with the 1970s vibe of self-expression, relaxation, and, well, zoning out. And sure, looking back, it might seem a bit odd that we were so captivated by wax in a bottle, but in an age before smartphones and endless screens, something as simple as a lava lamp offered pure, trippy joy, and that's something we could all still use today. Pet rock craze. Back in the mid-1970s, America found itself in the grip of one of the weirdest fads in history: A pet that didn't bark, didn't bite, didn't shed, and best of all, didn't move. Meet the pet rock. This oddball idea was the brainchild of Gary Dahl, a clever advertising executive who, in 1975, looked at a simple stone and saw dollar signs. He marketed it as the perfect pet. No feeding, no walking, no mess. Just a rock in a box, complete with breathing holes and a tongue-in-cheek care manual. For just $3.95, people lined up to adopt their own little gray buddy. And it paid off big time. In under 2 years, Dahl raked in around $1.5 million. That's a whole lot of money for something you could literally scoop up from your backyard. But like all novelty crazes, the pet rock had its moment and then quietly faded into pop culture history. Still, it was a perfect snapshot of the 1970s. Quirky, carefree, and just a little bit ridiculous. People may have laughed at it, but millions bought into the fun. And let's be honest, in a world full of complicated things, a rock for a pet didn't seem all that bad. Road trips with kids. Long before tablets, smartphones, and in-car movie screens, road trips in the 1970s were a whole different experience, especially for kids. Back then, entertainment meant using your imagination or playing games like I Spy, license plate bingo, or 20 questions. If you were lucky, maybe you had a travel board game or some snacks to pass the time. But for the most part, it was just you, your siblings, the open road, and a whole lot of staring out the window. Of course, boredom led to sibling squabbles, who got the window seat, who crossed the imaginary line in the middle, or who was breathing too loud. And parents only had so much patience. If things got too noisy or chaotic in the back seat, you were almost guaranteed to hear one of the all-time classic threats. "Don't make me stop this car," or worse, "Do you want me to turn this car around?" That second one? It sounded better than the first, because if the car did stop, you knew what was coming. And it wasn't pretty. The 1970s gas crisis. If you lived through the 1970s, you probably remember one of the most frustrating events of the decade, the gas crisis. It hit hard, and it hit fast. Due to international oil shortages and political tensions, fuel suddenly became scarce. The problem? Most of the cars back then were big, heavy gas guzzlers that drank fuel like water. So when gas ran low, panic kicked in. People lined up at stations for what felt like hours, sometimes even overnight, just to get a few gallons. The lines would stretch down the block and around the corner, all for a chance to fill up. And it wasn't a guarantee, either. Gas stations began using color-coded flags to signal what they had. A green flag meant, "Come on in, we've got fuel." But a red flag? That meant turn around, empty. Some places even limited how much you could buy, posting signs that said, 10 gallons per customer. Frustration grew, tempers flared, and suddenly, a simple trip to the pump became a test of patience. The gas crisis didn't just slow down traffic, it changed the way people thought about energy, consumption, and how dependent we'd all become on oil. It was a rough ride, and one nobody forgot. Backyard family cookouts. In the 1970s, backyard cookouts were more than just a meal. They were a weekend ritual. When the sun came out, the grill came out too. Dad would be flipping burgers and hot dogs while wearing tube socks and sandals, and Mom was likely nearby with a big bowl of homemade potato salad or baked beans. You'd hear laughter, maybe a transistor radio playing classic rock, and the sizzle of meat hitting the grill. Guests didn't need an invitation. Neighbors and cousins just showed up, sometimes bringing a side dish or a six-pack. Everyone grabbed a cold drink, maybe Kool-Aid for the kids or a can of Tab for the grown-ups, and settled into fold-up aluminum lawn chairs. the kind with the woven plastic straps that left funny marks on your legs. Paper plates were stacked high with chips, coleslaw, and watermelon slices, and the only screen in sight was the mesh covering the back door. There were no selfies, no catering companies, and no pressure for perfection. It wasn't about showing off. It was about slowing down. These cookouts were simple, joyful, and filled with connection. The food might have been basic, but the memories, absolutely priceless. Playing records together. In the 1970s, music wasn't something you listened to in isolation. It was a full-blown shared experience. Families and friends would gather around the turntable like it was the heart of the home. Someone would sit cross-legged on the carpet, flipping through stacks of vinyl records with care, carefully choosing the next album to spin. It wasn't about skipping songs or shuffling playlists. It was about the full journey, one track at a time. Maybe it was the Eagles playing Hotel California, or Stevie Wonder's smooth voice pouring through the speakers, or Fleetwood Mac spinning a story with every note. People didn't just hear the music, they felt it. You sang along, you danced barefoot on the shag carpet, or you just laid back and let the sound wash over you. That warm analog crackle from the needle touching vinyl? Pure magic. There were no earbuds, no digital skips, no distractions. Just the people in the room, the album on the turntable, and the shared joy of good music. It wasn't background noise, it was the moment. And those simple gatherings around the record player created memories that stuck, one timeless tune at a time. Jim Fixx and the running craze. In 1977, a man named Jim Fixx helped launch a nationwide fitness craze with his best-selling book, The Complete Book of Running. At a time when jogging was still considered kind of odd or even unnecessary, Fixx made a bold claim. Running wasn't just a hobby, it was the secret to better health, happiness, and a longer life. His book was part guide, part motivation, and it struck a chord with a generation that was beginning to think more seriously about exercise and lifestyle. Fixx wasn't just writing about it, he lived it. He was often photographed jogging in short shorts, sweatbands, and classic sneakers, becoming something of a fitness icon. His message was clear. Anyone, at any age, could take control of their health with just a pair of running shoes and a little dedication. But life had a tragic twist. In 1984, Fixx died suddenly of a heart attack while out for a run. He was just 52. Many saw the irony, but others pointed out that he had a genetic predisposition to heart disease, and argued that running may have extended his life longer than expected. Either way, his legacy stuck. Thanks to Jim Fixx, running became a movement. Billie Jean King and the Battle of the Sexes. Now let's jump back to 1973 for one of the most iconic moments in sports history, the Battle of the Sexes. This wasn't just a tennis match, it was a showdown that grabbed the attention of millions across the world. Bobby Riggs, a 59-year-old former Wimbledon champ, was convinced that even in his golden years, he could beat any woman on the court. And he didn't keep that opinion quiet. He was loud, cocky, and more than ready to prove his point. Enter Billie Jean King, 29 years old, in her prime, and ready to make a statement not just for herself, but for women everywhere. When the two faced off in Houston's Astrodome, over 90 million people tuned in worldwide. And what happened? Billie Jean dominated. She beat Riggs in straight sets, with skill, grace, and confidence. It wasn't just a victory in tennis, it was a cultural moment that pushed forward the conversation about gender equality in sports. That night, Billie Jean King became more than a champion. She became a symbol. The Ford Pinto. If there's one car from the 1970s that people remember for all the wrong reasons, it's the Ford Pinto. Introduced in 1971, the Pinto was meant to be an affordable, compact ride for the average American driver. Sure, it wasn't exactly a beauty. Its design was boxy, plain, and nothing to write home about. But that wasn't what gave it a place in infamy. The real problem? It had a dangerous little flaw. The Pinto's gas tank was positioned in such a way that, if the car was rear-ended just right, or rather just wrong, it could explode into flames. Literally. Sadly, this defect led to at least 27 documented deaths. The public was shocked, especially when it came out that Ford allegedly knew about the issue but decided not to make design changes because it would cost too much. And yet, people kept buying them. Maybe it was the price, maybe it was the fuel economy, or maybe people didn't know or didn't believe it could happen to them. Looking back, the Pinto is a prime example of style taking a backseat to safety, and safety taking a backseat to profits. Either way, it became one of the most infamous cars of its time, and a dark chapter in automotive history. What's one thing from the 1970s you wish today's kids could experience? Let's see how many of us miss the simple joys. Bicycles, bell-bottoms, and the struggle of the 70s kid. For kids growing up in the 1970s, nothing symbolized freedom quite like a bicycle. It wasn't just a way to get from point A to point B. It was your ticket to adventure. Whether it was racing down sidewalks, heading to the corner store, or riding loops around the neighborhood with your gang of friends, bikes were a daily part of life, especially when the sun was shining and school was out. But those bikes took a beating. Kids weren't exactly gentle riders, and it didn't take long before parts started breaking. One of the first things to go? The chain guard. At first glance, it might seem like no big deal. But for a kid in the 70s, it was a hidden hazard, especially if you were rocking the essential fashion of the time, bell-bottoms. Those wide, flared pant legs looked great, but were downright dangerous near a bike chain. One wrong move, and your jeans were either stuck, ripped, or tangled so badly you had to stop and unwind them while your friends laughed and pedaled ahead. Today's kids may have sleek bikes and skinny jeans, but they'll never understand the daily battle of bike chains versus bell-bottoms. Life in the 1970s, a simpler, quirky, wonderful time. Life in the 1970s had its own unique rhythm, one that feels worlds away from today's fast-paced, screen-obsessed lifestyle. Back then, no one had a smartphone glued to their hand, and you certainly didn't see families sitting around a dinner table with everyone staring at a screen. Social media didn't exist, and neither did 24-hour news or video calls. If you wanted to connect with someone, you called them on a landline. Or better yet, you just showed up at their door. Sure, we had television, and yes, it was a big deal. But when the shows were over, or even during commercial breaks, people actually went outside. Kids played until the streetlights came on. Neighbors stopped by for a chat, and weekends often meant cookouts, board games, or simple fun with friends and family. Of course, the 70s weren't without their quirks. We wore wild clothes, played odd games, and embraced some truly bizarre trends. But even with all the bell-bottoms, shag carpets, and lava lamps, it was a time full of genuine connection and carefree joy. Looking back, it was a great decade to grow up in, one that reminded us how sweet life can be when it's just a little bit simpler. Timeline: 1970. Everything that happened in 1970. What if I told you 1970 didn't just start a new decade? It kicked off one of the wildest, weirdest, most unforgettable years in modern history. From epic music moments to political chaos, tragedy, and cultural shifts, we're diving into everything that happened in 1970. Buckle up. This year was anything but quiet. Gaddafi becomes premier. It began with a whisper in the desert winds, a promise of revolution carried by a 27-year-old army officer with fire in his eyes. In January 1970, just months after leading a bloodless coup that removed Libya's King Idris, Muammar Gaddafi declared himself prime minister of a nation on the cusp of transformation. Young, sharp, and deeply critical of Western influence, Gaddafi swiftly moved to dismantle colonial-era structures. Foreign military bases were closed, and a wave of nationalist policies reshaped Libya's identity. To many, it felt like the dawn of renewed Arab pride, bold, uncompromising, and assertive. But over the next 4 decades, Gaddafi's rule would harden. What began with revolutionary fervor eventually gave way to authoritarianism and unrest, culminating in his downfall in 2011. It stands as a powerful reminder: not all revolutions end where they begin. Mood rings. These colorful rings were all the rage in the 1970s, and they weren't just jewelry. They were a full-blown feelings detector, or so we like to think. Inside each ring was a layer of thermotropic liquid crystals that changed color based on your body temperature. Supposedly, the shifting hues reflected your mood. Blue meant you were calm and happy. Violet meant you were excited. And black, well, maybe just cold hands. Or a bad day. It wasn't exactly backed by science, but that didn't stop millions from putting their emotional faith in a tiny ring. Guys loved gifting them to girlfriends. It was like saying, "I care, but I also kind of want a shortcut to figure you out." And sure, it wasn't foolproof. Far from it. But it added a little mystique, a little fun, and maybe even sparked a few heartfelt conversations. Looking back, mood rings weren't accurate, but they were definitely entertaining. They captured that 1970s mix of curiosity, self-discovery, and love of all things far out. And if nothing else, they gave us a reason to believe that a tiny piece of jewelry could read our hearts. The metric system that never stuck. On December 23, 1975, President Gerald Ford signed something called the Metric Conversion Act. The goal? To officially make the metric system the preferred way of measuring things in the U.S. It was supposed to be a smooth transition. Goodbye inches and pounds, hello centimeters and kilograms. But there was just one little problem. Americans didn't want to change. Despite the government's best efforts, most schools, businesses, and industries shrugged and stuck with the good old imperial system. The public wasn't sold on liters of milk or speed limits in kilometers. So even today, we're stuck in measurement limbo, living in a country that technically prefers metric, but practically still uses miles, gallons, and feet. Need to convert your height to centimeters, or figure out kilometers per hour. Better have a calculator ready. It's one of those classic, almost moments in U.S. history, so close to joining the rest of the world, yet still clinging to our quirky American ways. Which of these 70s memories made you laugh or say, "I remember that," the most? Share your favorite moment in the comments below. Avocado green appliances. Step into any 1970s kitchen, and you'd be greeted by a burst of color that today's sleek stainless steel just can't compete with. Back then, home appliances weren't just functional. They were fashion statements. The stars of the show? Avocado green, harvest gold, copper tone brown, almond, and mustard yellow. These weren't just paint choices. They were full-blown lifestyle choices. Refrigerators, ovens, dishwashers, you name it, were decked out in these so-called earth tones, creating warm, cozy vibes that spread far beyond the kitchen. And it didn't stop there. Bathrooms joined the party too. White toilets were rare. You were more likely to see baby pink, sky blue, or even pea green porcelain, complete with a shaggy carpeted toilet lid and matching tank cover to seal the deal. And yes, even the toilet paper matched. You could get it in pastel shades to coordinate with the rest of your decor, because why wouldn't your bathroom tissue be lemon yellow or blush pink? Thankfully, some lines were never crossed. Coppertone brown toilet paper never quite made it onto store shelves. Macrame decor. If you walked into a home in the 1970s, chances are you'd spot at least one piece of macrame art hanging proudly on the wall, or maybe 5. Macrame was the go-to craft of the decade, and it brought a whole lot of handmade charm to every corner of the house. From plant hangers to pillow covers, drink coasters to wall art, this knotted rope trend was practically a rite of passage for every crafty homemaker. And let's not forget the most famous macrame creation of all, the wise old owl. If you didn't have one of those staring down from your living room wall, were you even living in the 70s? These ropey birds, often complete with wooden bead eyes, became a quirky symbol of the times. Macrame wasn't just decoration. It was a hobby, a statement, a way to pass the time and add a personal touch to the home. Today, you'll find these relics in antique shops and thrift stores, quietly waiting for their moment to return. And while the revival hasn't hit full swing just yet, you never know. After all, fashion is a circle, and the 1970s were nothing if not bold, boho, and full of character. Shag carpets. These thick, fuzzy floor coverings were everywhere, from living rooms to bedrooms, and for a while, they were the absolute pinnacle of cozy home decor. People didn't just walk on them, they lounged on them, laid on them, and yes, even made shag angels in them, just like snow. Available in all kinds of bold colors, from burnt orange to avocado green, shag carpets turned every room into a soft, funky paradise. They were warm, inviting, and incredibly soft underfoot. But owning shag carpet wasn't just about the comfort, it came with a full-time job. The long fibers trapped everything. From crumbs and dirt to earrings and lost remote controls, once something disappeared into the pile, it was probably gone for good. Keeping them clean was a daily battle. People actually used shag rakes to fluff and groom their floors. And heaven forbid you dropped chewing gum or a lit cigarette on it. Good luck getting that out. Eventually, what once felt luxurious became a maintenance nightmare. Saturday Night Live, SNL, in the 1970s. When Saturday Night Live first aired on October 11, 1975, nobody knew they were witnessing the birth of a comedy revolution. Live from New York, it was edgy, unpredictable, and totally unlike anything else on the TV. Created by Lorne Michaels, the show quickly gained a cult following, and it didn't take long for names like John Belushi, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Gilda Radner to become household names. Part of the magic was the live element. You had to be in front of the TV at the right time, or you'd miss the jokes everyone would be quoting on Monday morning. Whether you were reenacting Samurai Delicatessen or laughing about the latest Weekend Update, SNL sketches became water-cooler conversation gold. It wasn't just a show, it was a weekly cultural event. Today, SNL is still on the air, decades later. But times have changed. You can now watch sketches anytime on YouTube, Hulu, or Peacock. Whether or not the humor hits the same way, or the cast shines as bright as the original legends, that's up for debate. But one thing's for sure, those early days of SNL in the 70s helped shape modern comedy as we know it. The rise and fall of disco. The 1970s brought us an unforgettable soundtrack, whether it was soulful ballads, rock anthems, or pop hits. But no genre defined the decade's dance floors quite like disco. It was more than just music. It was a full-blown cultural movement, complete with flashing lights, mirror balls, and polyester suits. From Donna Summer to the Bee Gees, disco was the heartbeat of the club scene. The genre's influence was so powerful that even rock bands jumped on board. The Rolling Stones dipped into disco with Miss You, and even the hard-rocking Kiss released I Was Made for Lovin' You, a catchy, disco-infused hit that became one of their biggest sellers. Ironically, Gene Simmons couldn't stand the track, but it gave the band a massive commercial boost. But disco's dominance didn't last. On July 12, 1979, a Chicago DJ named Steve Dahl held the now infamous Disco Demolition Night at a White Sox game. A crate full of disco records was blown up in center field, sparking chaos and a full-blown riot. That night marked the beginning of disco's downfall in the U.S. as public backlash grew. Still, disco never truly died. While it faded from American charts, it continued to thrive in Europe and left behind a beat that still makes us move. Thank you for watching. To continue with more content, comment yes to let us know you're still following. Men's unbuttoned shirts and chest hair trend. Back in the 1970s, style for men was all about confidence, and that meant showing a little skin. If your shirt wasn't unbuttoned at least halfway down your chest, well, you were missing out on peak fashion. The deeper the V, the cooler you looked. And if you had a healthy patch of chest hair peeking out, even better. That was the ultimate badge of sex appeal. Icons like Burt Reynolds, Tom Jones, and John Travolta helped set the standard. They made it clear, real men didn't hide their chest hair, they flaunted it. Paired with a gold chain, a wide collar, and a strut of pure swagger, this look screamed disco-ready and completely irresistible. Fast forward to today, and things have flipped. Smooth chests are in, with many young guys opting for shaving, waxing, or even laser hair removal. Chest hair has become more of a personal choice than a fashion statement. But just like bell-bottoms and mustaches, you never know when it might make a comeback. So, will the open shirt and fuzzy chest look ever return? Fashion's a cycle, my friend, and if history teaches us anything, the 70s never stay gone for long. The bump and the hustle, iconic dances. With disco music lighting up every club and roller rink in the 1970s, you just knew there had to be some unforgettable dance moves to go along with it. And oh, there were. One of the most iconic? The bump. It was simple, fun, and a little bit mischievous. All you had to do was stand side by side with a partner and, on the beat, bump hips back and forth. That was it. No fancy footwork, just good old-fashioned hip checking, often repeated until someone walked away with a bruise or two and a big grin. But if you wanted something a little smoother and less painful, there was always the hustle. Thanks to the hit song Do the Hustle, this dance became a nationwide craze. It was more choreographed, with turns, spins, and gliding steps that made you feel like a disco king or queen. Whether you were bumping elbows and hips at house parties or spinning across the light-up floors of Studio 54, these dances were part of what made the disco era so unforgettable. Those simple moments from the 70s still hold a special place in our hearts. If you enjoyed this trip back in time, please like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you won't miss our next nostalgic journey.